it should just go fine. So, all right. So the recording has been started. All right. So let's get started. So those of you who don't know me, I'll kind of quickly introduce myself. I'm Hardik. I'm one of the founder at Xenett. I'm also an accountant. I'm kind of fintech lover, and that's what motivated us to create a platform like this, right? So, um, as I kind of briefly explain you, the way we're gonna go about this call is that we're gonna kind of touch base on the workflow, how exactly Zenit should be used. Then we'll also talk about some of the best practices that we have, some of the recently launched new features, and then we'll also talk about some of the new features which are on our roadmap. I'm gonna share my screen and I'm gonna share with you. Just a second. All right, Manish, can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm also gonna touch base on some of the basic stuff. I know many of you guys kind of are regular pro users, so you may find some of the basic stuff also. But what we also try to touch base is because there are a lot of new people as well. So just to keep that in mind, I'm also gonna talk about some of the basic stuff as well, right? So this is the list of all the clients that we have. Uh, the way it's gonna work is that you're gonna add the client here. You can connect QuickBooks and Zero file, and then you'll be able to kind of connect it here. Once the client is added, you're gonna click on this client name. That should be the very next step where you will kind of be into that client, and you can then start the review process. Once you are into this client, so this is the client name, the unicorn. This is where you're going to select the review period. Now, this is where it's pretty flexible, where you can select 1 month or multiple months as well. Like, let's say if I wanted to review, I mean, especially now, because the year is going to end, all you could do, you could just select, hey, I wanted to select January to December or January to November or whatever, right? It's pretty straightforward. Just select the first month and then do a second click on the last month, and it will then select the whole range, right? So that's pretty straightforward. So what this means is that you can do monthly review, you can do quarterly review, you can do annual review as well, right? A lot of people also use it in such a way that, let's say they got a new lead and they wanted to kind of find out whether the books is in good shape, bad shape. So all they do is that they're gonna kind of connect the client, they're gonna kind of select the whole range, and then they're gonna quickly find out where does, like, what's the health of the books. So that's also another way of using this app. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to select, let's say, this quarter. I'm going to select on run, and then this whole data will be populated for this particular period. Okay. Now, once you've selected the review period, you'll have to start the review, right? In this case, the review process is already started. That's why we see end review. Otherwise, you're going to see the start review button here, right? Um, the way it's gonna work now is that one by one we can go through each of this review point and can kind of resolve them. Okay, so I'll kind of start with uncategorized entries, which is pretty straightforward. And see, the goal here is that, see, when we review, we really don't know where the problems are. So this is the best and quickest way of looking at all of those different things on one place, quickly go through them and kind of resolve them, right? So imagine, like, if I am one of the staff users or if I am one of the junior accountant, my goal here that I'll kind of be going through each of these review point and will take appropriate action wherever it's required, right? So just to give you an example, let's say I'm into uncategorized entries. Now in this case, I should reclassify these transactions to appropriate accounts, right? So let's say I'm into like I wanted to find out for this Plum Master if at all there are any transactions for this vendor in the past. I want to quickly look for it, and I want to see how exactly those have been coded in the past. All I can do a right click. I can say smart search. It will immediately pull up the ledger for that vendor, right? So I can see how exactly all these transactions have been coded in the past, and I can quickly reclassify. So that's one of the best and quickest way of finding out or looking for anything, like just on the right click, right? Another way to quickly search, let's say you are here and you wanted to search something for vendor or account or anything. This is the best way here on the top, where you can type in, let's say Plum Master. It will start giving you suggestions, and then all you have to do, just click on it. It will pull up the transactions accordingly, right? So that's also another way of searching the transactions real quick. Now this is the best part about this is that, see, it does not kind of throw you out from the screen that you're working on. It's still open, like the whole, it's a pop-up experience, right? So even if I do a right click and kind of search something, it's still going to open up as a pop-up. So as soon as I close it, I will be back on the screen that I was on. Okay, so now let's say I know the answer now and I want to reclassify this transaction. All I can do, just click on it here, and I can say, hey, this is something, I'm going to put it to office expenses. I just kind of select it here, click outside, and within seconds it will disappear from here. And immediately right here, the changes also gets updated back to the QuickBooks file as well. Okay, so that's a kind of quickest way of reclassifying these transactions. Now in this case, there is one more transactions Amazon, which let's say I'm not exactly sure what it's all about. Now this is where you'll have to kind of get information from your client. So like we also have a client portal where you can directly ask questions to your client instead of you downloading it in Excel file, sending it to your client, then client responding back, right? So there's a lot of back and forth, there is delay. So you may also decide to use our client portal as well. Okay, now in this particular case, it's pretty straightforward. You can simply select this and say ask. Just type in your questions here. Like in this case, you could say, hey, what is this transactions for? And just simply click on ask. So what you're seeing here is these are all the template questions. So template questions are like one of the quickest way of uh, kind of typing in the questions, because you don't have to type in literally. These are most frequently used question, I mean asked questions, and you can also customize it as per your need, right? So in this case, all you can do, just kind of create those questions, just select the appropriate one and just say ask, right? Now the questions is ask. The way it's gonna work is that like what's gonna happen is that it's not gonna send an individual email to the client, right? The way it's gonna work is that you can actually configure how often do you want to send an email to the client, right? And I'll also show you what your client's gonna see. So this is just gonna pull it up here for a second. Okay, so this is what the client's gonna see. Client's only gonna see the questions as such. They're not gonna look at any other stuff, right? So they can see that, hey, what are these transactions for? And they can also suggest you the account as well. Like they can say that, hey, this is something, let's say I'm just gonna assume, let's say this was office supplies for now, right? And they can also suggest it, and they can type in the comments as well in case if they want to add some more comments. They can type in the comments. They can also attach the document if they have one. So in this case, let's say they attach it, send and close, and it's done, right? So that way it's just gonna disappear from here. So this is the kind of quickest way even for the client to answer it, and it also brings a lot of clarity and visibility for the client, because now they exactly know what are the questions that my accountant is waiting for, right? And it's more like a real time, like I know the answer, I submit it, and that's it. It directly reaches to the accountant. Unlike if you would have sent it in email, then if I was a client, like, unless and until I have answers for all the questions, and unless and until I send back that Excel file to my accountant, right? It's not going to be real time. So this is kind of also helping a lot of our customers to get the feedback pretty quickly. So from the client perspective, it's pretty simple. They can leave the comments, they can attach the documents, they can also suggest the accounts or class or location or all of those information, right? Now, once clients kind of, let's say, resolve it or response back, it gets kind of cleared from the screen, and kind of you're gonna find it here under resolve tab, right? So the way it's gonna also work is that once the client has submitted their response, right, there is a view here on, like, on accountant side, like when you're in Xenett, there is a kind of view here that says client questions. Now in this particular case, like, you can see all of those questions that they are still waiting from the client. Anytime you have received a feedback or response from the client, you're going to find it here under to review, and you can see that, hey, these are all of those questions where your client has submitted the response for, right? Now whenever a client gives you, let's say, suggestions about the account or class or location, you're going to find it here, right? See, we understand that clients are not accountants, right? So at times they may suggest that some accounts, but they may not be right all the time, right? So that is why the way it works is that we are not going to directly change it to change those changes into the QuickBooks file, but it will ask you for your approval. So in this case, this is how it's going to show up whenever the client suggests you something. So as an accountant, I can see that, hey, in this case, client suggested me for furniture and fixture. If I'm okay with it, I'm going to click on it and it will then update it. If I was not okay with it, I could simply dismiss, and then I mean, it will just disappear from this screen, right? And if at all client has commented something, they can, I mean, you can actually look at it here. In case if you want to further comment, you can also do it. So that way, things don't get lost as such, because now it just stays here. Unlike in email, because you further questions, you send an email back to your client, so there is a lot of back and forth, right? So that way, what's going to happen here is that when you are on to review, either you accept whatever your client has submitted, and then you're going to close it, right? Once you close it, that's it. I mean, it's going to move from to review to resolved, right? But if at all you have some questions, in this case, let's say your client has given you um, a document, but you would say, hey, this is not clear, this is not clear, please send me a new copy, right? So what you can also do is that you can send this question back to your client. So when you do a resend, it will actually move from to review to open again. Same way your client's going to find it under open questions as well. So that way you can kind of simply do back and forth with your client within the portal. Now you can have a transactional questions and you can have a non-transactional questions. So it's not always about like asking a question on transaction, but you may have some more questions about, hey, can you send me a bank statement, or can you send me last year tax return, right? So you can also ask non-transactional question here. So the way it's gonna work is that there's an option here on the bottom. It says ask questions. When you click on it, again the same pop-up will show up where you can either choose to write a question, or you can just simply select one of the template questions, and you can kind of ask simply to your client, right? So that's a client portal. There are a lot of features that we are kind of planning to add, which I'm going to talk about I mean, during the later part of the call. um, there are different features here, like we can search questions simply. Now one thing I was just talking, I wanted to cover is how is your client notified, right? Now we actually have a client setting which is specific for the client portal related, where you can decide how frequently you want to remind your client for the questions that you are waiting for. So in this case, I kind of say that, hey, I want to remind my client every week, let's say Tuesday or let's say Friday, and then I can also decide the time. So what is happening is that, see, instead of you asking questions every single question, you definitely don't want to bombard your client inbox with a lot of emails. So what we do is that we kind of just send them a reminder email with a link in that. So whenever clients clicks on that, it is going to open the client portal on their computer, and they just have to type in the 6 digits pin code, which they just have to set it up when you have invited your client user for the first time. So it's more like entering client portal is super simple, because all they have to remember is that 6 digits pin, which is what they have set up at the time of invitation, right? And they will be on the client portal and they can start responding. So this is where you can actually decide how frequently you want to send them a reminder. Now also the reminder email will only get sent if at all there are open questions, right? So let's say I kind of chose Tuesday and Friday, but if my client, let's say, has responded all the questions, all the open questions by Friday, then on next Tuesday it's not going to send an email, because there's nothing for client to answer, right? So it's not going to bother the client as such. So that way you can also set up the configuration. And this client portal is optional. You don't necessarily have to use it. It's just an optional feature. If you enable it, then and then you will be able to invite your client. Otherwise, you don't have to do it as such. Okay. So that's a client portal that you may decide to use it. Um, then the next one is entry posted to parent account. I'm not gonna actually get into detail of uh, every single review point, because many of them are pretty straightforward, very self-explanatory. And I will also show you, just in case if you're not sure what it's all about, you can quickly find out what it is. So whenever you go to any of the review point, you're gonna find out this info icon. So info icon gives you a brief about that particular review point, right? It's a brief, but then if you still want to learn more, you can click on this learn more, and we have detailed tutorial along with the videos, along with the screenshots wherever possible, which will then give you enough education about what this review point is all about. All right. So in this case, I'm gonna touch base that, hey, you got some transactions that are posted to parent account. Now in QuickBooks, you must be familiar that you have a parent account and then you have sub accounts. So whenever there are transactions recorded to parent accounts instead of sub accounts, it's gonna show up here. And all you want to do is you want to reclassify all these transactions to appropriate accounts, right? So in this case, I can say, like, I can see there are 9 transactions, and there six of 5 of them are for Amazon. I don't have to do one by one. All I can do is that I can select multiple of them. As soon as I select multiple of them, there is a bulk panel which is coming up from the top, which allows me to reclassify all these transactions on one go, right? So in this case, I could say that, hey, all these transactions should go to one of the sub account. Let's say I'm going to put it to office supplies and software. I'm going to apply it, and that's it. Within seconds, it's just going to reclassify all these transactions to appropriate sub accounts, and I'll just be done with that, right? So that's super simple. You can also select multiple transactions. There's a kind of selection box here, and you can reclassify. All right, so now there are some common features that you're gonna find across, like, wherever you go. So these are the left panel, by the way, indicates different review points that require attention, right? So our goal is to go through each of these review point, make sure we address it, and once we have addressed it, this will then give us a confidence that, hey, we have taken care of all the abnormalities, all the problems, and then that means the numbers are reliable, the numbers are accurate, right? Now, some of the common features that you're going to find it across is playing around with the table. So this is pretty flexible table. If you want to see this column here on the front, you can do that. If you want to sort something by description, you can do that, or by amount, you can do that, right? It's pretty straightforward. It's more like an Excel as such, right? So that way it's pretty handy. If you want to change the grouping, like see right now it's grouped by account and then it's grouped by name, right? But if you want to change here and there, like if you want to remove the name grouping, you can do that. If you want to do it again, just simply do a drag and drop, you can do it, right? So it's pretty simple. Right click, there is an expand all, collapse all. You also have an option to enable and disable columns. See, by default, there are so many columns. We actually give all the columns um, options as kind of as options for you to enable and disable, right? So if you just say that, hey, I really don't care about the split column, or I don't want to kind of really worry about currency and those kind of thing, you can kind of play around as well. Okay, so those are the things. There is a way, like let's say if I just have a question for this particular one, let's say I wanted a receipt for this, I can also do a like ask question from here. Just say ask question, and in this case I can say receipt and ask that. It's pretty straightforward, right? So the question is now submitted on the portal. Or you can also edit the transactions on a click, which I also showed you real quick. Like let's say if you want to change this account, or if you want to kind of put a name reference number here, it's just can be done on a click. But if you want to open the whole transaction itself on a screen, there is a way. Click here to edit the transaction. It is then gonna open the whole transaction on a news, like on a full screen, which is more like a QuickBooks screen where you can see all the fields and you can kind of change whatever information that you like. If you have at all attached any documents in QuickBooks, it's also going to show up. All right, so that these are some of the most common features that you're going to find it here. Many of the review points are, as I mentioned, pretty straightforward. Entries without class, without location, entries without name, right? Now, by the way, see all of those review points come default. But if you at all don't want any of them, there is a way to enable and disable them. Click on this menu, click on configure, and you decide which one you want, which one you don't, right? Now, whatever changes that you do here will only be applicable to the client that you are in. It is not going to impact all other clients, right? So for example, in this case, if I choose not to see this one, let's say it is only going to impact the client, the next unicorn. It's not going to impact other clients as well. So this is kind of also a way to customize that. um, um, Another thing that each of these review points can also be configured. So in this case, there is a way to do that. There's a config icon here where you can say that, hey, in this case, it displays me list of all the transactions without name. But I would say that, hey, I don't want to see journal entries here, or I don't want to see deposit transaction here. I can do that because there is a way for me to exclude certain transactions, right? Or I could say I don't want to uh, see the transactions from certain accounts. I can also do that. So in short, each of these review points can be configurable. So depending upon the type of review point, the configuration would be different. And each of these review points can also be exported in Excel as well. There's an Excel icon here, which lets you export the Excel file, and we can kind of simply download and do whatever you like. Um, if you want to download the one Excel file, having all of those review points into one Excel file, this is the option, export like all reports, right? So what it does is that it's gonna kind of take all of those review points, put them into one Excel file. So it's pretty handy because now you can see everything on just one file. All right, so then I'm gonna move to the next one, negative and zero balance vendors. simple, like generally we don't expect vendors or customers to show negative balance. So again, here you can quickly see, you can investigate why it's negative, and you can then take appropriate action. Duplicate entries. So all like, see, we kind of have for this particular one, we kind of have combined a lot of parameters to find out or to figure out whether it's a duplicate transaction or not. So I'll give you an example here. So let's say in this case, there was a bill on 9/17 for $2,000, 2050, and there is an expense also for 9/30 for the same amount, right? Apparently I can make out that, hey, most likely this was supposed to be a bill payment for this bill. However, instead of applying that payment towards a bill, someone decided to enter a new expense altogether, right? It was a mistake, right? So in this case, even Xenett is smart enough to kind of figure out some of the situations like this, and it's going to tell you that, hey, this could be a possible duplicate transaction, right? So things like this, I mean, obviously if there are two duplicate bills or kind of checks or two duplicate expenses, those are some of the kind of common things. It is anyway going to be displayed. But even like if it's a different transactions type altogether, right? It's in this case like bill and expense, like deposit and sales receipt, it is also going to look at those other transactions type as well to consider whether it's duplicate or not. Now in this case, let's say if it is not duplicate, see in this case, even though Zenith suggested that it's duplicate, but then if it is not, you have a way to sign off. Like sign off meaning you are telling Zenith that, hey, this is not duplicate and it's going to be hidden. So when you click on it, it will then disappear, right? Because it wasn't duplicate. So if it was a duplicate, then all you could do, you could actually delete it from here. Like in this case, like let's say if there were two different bills and one of them were duplicate, you could just simply delete it, right? But if wasn't duplicate, all you do, sign off, and then it will disappear from here, right? So that's that. Your duplicate names, where you can find all the identical customers, vendors. Many of these review points are here, and unreconciled entries gonna display some of the unusual unreconciled transaction. This one is also a good one. Review vendor list, where you can see list of all the vendors with the last entry date in here, right? So as you can see, there are many of the vendors which haven't been used for a while, but these are still active. All you could do, you can select multiple of them and mark them inactive on one simple click, right? So this will help you make sure that you have a clean and accurate vendor customers NGL list in your QuickBooks file. Okay, so that's that. These are all the different default review points. You can also have your own custom review points, by the way. So see, each clients have their own specific review point. So I'll give you an example. Like so when you click on add, there's a kind of box pop up that lets you um, use different parameters to create your own custom review points, right? So for example, let's say I wanted to find out all the transactions in fixed assets that are less than certain amounts, right? Because you may want to expense them out. So in this case, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna come here, select all the fixed asset transaction, and then I'm gonna add one more criteria. I'm gonna say if the transaction amount is, let's say, if less than $2,000, and I kind of configured it, then I'm gonna save it. I can give you a name and then I can save it. It's a one time, that's it. Once you have done it, it's gonna add it here, right? And it's pretty straightforward now. See, you don't have to imagine, first of all, you don't have to remember about it. You don't have to go and look for it in like every single account. It's just readily available, right? And next month, if I switch the period here, it's still gonna be there. So that way, kind of the navigation is super simple. Now I can see there are three of them. I kind of set capitalization limit. I can see these are less than $2,500 because that's what the limit that I set it up. I'm gonna do, I'm gonna select them all and I'm gonna say, hey, I'm gonna move them to office supplies, right? That's it. It's super simple to kind of quickly look at the result and accordingly take the action. Another view I created, which is again an example, is fixed asset purchases without receipt. See, I want to make sure that I need to have a receipt for every single fixed asset purchase that my client does. So in this case, I can see that there are many of them, right? And even I can also set up the threshold. I mean, I don't want to worry about the smaller amounts, right? So in this case, I'm going to select them, these transactions, and I'm going to say ask. I can say I need a receipt and ask, right? So all these questions are then submitted to the client portal. So this is pretty handy. Save such views. If there is something that you every month are looking for, uh, all you should do is kind of just add them here, and that's it. It's just gonna stay forever. So that's more like a save search views. Okay. Um, the way it's gonna work is that, see, on left, this left panel, you see some of the review points in green and some of them in black. So the way it works is that there is a way to sign off each of these review points. What this green indicates is that you have reviewed it and it's all fine. See, for now, just ignore this count because it's sample data. But what's going to happen is that, let's say uncategorized entry, I got the answer from my client that, let's say this was simply office supplies here, and I kind of just change it. So what's going to happen is that there is a way here to sign off. When you sign off, this percentage progress bar actually gets increased. And with this sign off, this also turns into green. So our goal is to go through each of these review points one by one and then sign off them as well, right? So that way, eventually, this progress percentage will reach to 100%. Okay. So that's a way that um, the workflow should actually flow. Now, one of the practice that many of our customers actually follow is that they don't really wait for the month to end and then start the review process, right? Depending upon the size of the client, they may ask their staff to either do a weekly review or bi-weekly review, right? Because imagine if there are duplicate entries, right? Why would you wait for month to end and then catch things like that, right? Instead, if you are doing this kind of review on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, you can see it right there and you can fix it right there. So imagine by the time the month ends, right, you don't have to do much. So imagine today is 30th November, right? If I would have kind of gone through this stuff on a weekly or bi-weekly basis throughout the November, by the time I'm standing on 30th November, I wouldn't really have to worry much about it because most of the things have already been resolved. So that actually helps me as an accountant user to expedite my closing process, right? Because most of the things have been resolved, and I can then also manage more clients. Like I can also kind of handle more clients for month end closing, right? Because all the month end closing happens at the same time, right? So at times it's stressful, it's hectic, right? So to avoid that, a lot of people actually use this. Another thing that, especially for those practices where you have someone doing bookkeeping, someone else doing review, what they have done is that many of this stuff can easily be done by the junior staff, the primary bookkeeper, right? So instead of having reviewer going through all of those reviews and fixing them and spending their time, what most of our customers have also done is that they have asked their junior staff to go through this, and then kind of most of the things can easily be resolved by the junior staff, so the reviewers don't have to do much. Like imagine if me being a reviewer, if I come here and if I see this is zero, this is zero, this is zero, it's like Most of the things have already been fixed. I only have to deal with the ones that my junior staff or my colleague wasn't able to resolve, right? So that way it just gets smooth, it just gets quickly done, right? So that's more like a quick workflow. Now I'm gonna, yeah, one more thing before I forget, which is a zap on this. This is a kind of a, we just launched couple of months back. There are some improvements that we plan to do, but in our January or February release. So with this zap mode, what we're trying to do is that we kind of try to make your error fixing cycle pretty easy. So instead of telling you that, hey, you got this problem, that problem, you're gonna start seeing the suggestions from our end, right? So in this case, you can see that, hey, Amazon.com transactions right now posted to furniture and fixtures, it should go to office expenses, right? So we do have some mechanism. We actually look at the trend, and accordingly we're gonna try to give you the most accurate suggestions, right? So all you have to do, either accept or dismiss, right? uh, we are trying to eliminate the whole experience for you. First of all, to figure out what is the problem, then find out what is the right account, and then fixing it. Like, you open the transaction, you go to that account, try to look for the right account. It's just too much to be done. So in this case, it's pretty straightforward, whether you accept it or dismiss it, right? Like, if you see that this is right, just say accept, and it will just show you the next one. Pretty straightforward. If you say this is fine, this is fine. So our goal is to kind of have you guys fix some of this stuff real quick, within seconds, right? And very soon we are also going to make this experience available to the cell phone as well. So what this means is that if your staff is, let's say, traveling or walking or whatever, they don't have to be in the front of computer. Like, this is just going to be available on a mobile phone, and they can just start fixing things as they see it, right? So this is also even kind of make the whole error fixing process real quick, right? So that's a zap mode for now. All right, so that is a kind of a overall workflow that we have. Now I'm gonna spend a few minutes on some of the stuff that we actually plan to bring. Most probably it's gonna be end of January or somewhere in mid February, right? We haven't really concluded the release date yet, but this is gonna be a huge, like, we call it Xenett 2.0. It's gonna be a huge change because, technically speaking, we are scrapping this. I mean, at least from the development perspective, I mean the coding perspective, because it's a altogether a new experience, right? So see, right now, as you can see, Xenett is mainly about this left panel, like all of those review points that we have, right? We are going to have a lot more other modules as well. I'm just gonna give you a quick sneak peek, right? Obviously, there are going to be communications sent to you. There is going to be launch webinar, and all of those things will definitely happen. But while we are on this call, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up as to what is coming your way, right? So Zenit's value proposition so far has been more towards finding the errors, allowing you to quickly fix it, and make sure that your numbers kind of are accurate on real-time basis, right? But then I'm going to talk about what's going to happen. See, this is a speed mode. This is a speed mode module that we call it. Now what's going to happen is that speed mode. So by the way, this is like a screen. This is uh, not the app. I'm just going to show you that real quick. Speed mode is just going to be one of the module, right? Uh, but this is just a sample. So this is one of the module. uh, there is a questions tab here where you have a client questions. Then you would, it's gonna be a change, like a lot of changes with the UI, speed, performance, and everything, right? It's gonna look much more matured, neat, and clean. So this is a questions module. Like, the look is gonna change, the workflow and everything will remain same, but like, there is going to be, see, right now we just have a client questions, but then if you want to ask someone internally, there is a way to do that as well. Like there is a way to even ask someone internally as well. So these are all the different modules, right? So speed mode is just going to be one of the module. Then I'm also going to talk about other modules real quick. So one of the other module is going to be to do as well. A lot of people also ask for this, where they have routine task and they want to kind of manage it here. It's going to be optional, by the way, right? You don't have to use it. If you're already using some other system for your to do, then you don't have to use it. But this is something, if you have kind of your routine task as such, onboarding related or routine bookkeeping, right? You can easily manage it here, right? You can have the tags, assignee, and all of those stuff, right? So there's a to-do module as well. Again, this is gonna be, as I mentioned, if you don't want to see it, you don't have to enable it, right? So this is to-do module will let you manage all your to-dos. Closed mode is going to be one of the other module, which I'll kind of also show you, is where, see, this is where you can actually manage all your reconciliation, right? So let's say if you are into cash and let me just bring it up. Okay, so what's going to happen is that in the closed mode, where you can actually do a systematic close, like let's say this is the month you are reviewing progress percentage, and you can have the different to dos as well. Because see, uh, let's say for cash and bank account, there are certain activities to be done. Like, hey, I want to review unreconciled entries. You can have the checklist underneath. Checklist could be your guidelines that, hey, make sure there are no transfer entries, make sure there are no ACH payments long overdue, or debit card entries and things like that, right? So you don't have to refer to any third party document or any Word document or Google document for that reason. It's just going to be available while you are closing. See, right now, this is something that a lot of our customers have requested, is that, see, they are going through this list, right? But then they don't have a way to add the custom checklist here, or they have to refer to other document to follow some guidelines, right? So all of those things can easily be done here, because now you can actually create the closing to do. You can also assign it to preparer, reviewer, whoever you like, right? And there is a due date and everything. So you can now do a systematic close, right? So far all you've been doing is just looking at the errors and resolving it, right? And you were still following some closed procedures somewhere else. But this module will let you close your period systematically, where you can do a sign off and everything. You can leave the explanation, you can have the preparer, reviewer, you can have the sign off and everything, right? You can also this is a sample data, so ignore it. I mean, this was supposed to be an account, bank account. So you can also manage the reconciliation as well, that, hey, this is coming from your books, this is coming, like this is the reconciliation. Let's say if you have prepared a reconciliation in the Excel, you can link it here. You will be able to integrate your Excel file directly here, right? And there is a variance as well. So you don't have to go to other places to look for supporting documents. If I, as a reviewer, if I was looking at this, if let's say if I was looking at profit and loss or balance sheet, and if I want to find out supporting working paper for any of the account, I don't have to ask anyone. I don't have to go to different places to look for it. It's just gonna be right there, right? So it, like, you will be able to link it here and it will open it right here. And if I have any question, I don't have to separately send a message to Slack or Teams or email as such. I'll be able to do the communication from here. If I have a question for client, I can ask from here. If I have a question for my team member or staff or my manager, I can do, like, I can ask from here as well. If I want to leave a review note, like explanation, that, hey, why this balance is off, or why this balance is high or low, or any kind of it, I can do it here, right? So all we are trying to do is that we are aggregating a lot of these activities that you otherwise are doing at different places. You can easily do it in one place. So this is not like a final design as such, but I'm just kind of giving you some glimpse as to what it is, right? So there is a close mode, is where you can now do a systematic close, right? You don't have to rely on a separate checklist as such, or separate system as such that you may have in place. You can continue doing your Excel working papers as such. Like if you are doing prepaid expenses, working papers, accrual, all of or loan reconciliation or anything like that, you can continue doing it, but you will now have a way to easily connect it here, right? So that way it's pretty handy. You can go back in past and you can find out the working, right? Like if at all, if someone is looking at balance sheet and wondering what this balance is all about, whether it's right or not, they can simply open that, like the working papers from here itself, right? So that's more like a closed mode. Questions where internal client questions. There is going to be a files module as well, where you can have all your bank statements inside it, important documents like sales tax returns, payroll returns, like anything, and like any kind of documents that you may decide to store there as well, right? Reports is where we plan to generate a financials package that you can then share with your client, right? Right now we just have a basic reports available. I mean, if you look at it in here, we just have a basic reports, right? Which is more from the review perspective. But once the review is done, once the number are final, and if you want to submit a package, a reporting package to a client, that's going to be available under this module called reports, right? So that's module for that. Okay. So this is more like, I mean, there are different features here and there, but uh, this is expected to come, as I mentioned, somewhere we can expect it somewhere in February, but this is going to be huge change as such. Speed mode, even in speed mode, let me also kind of show you something about the speed mode. We are also going to make some changes with that. It's also going to be super easier. So I'll kind of show you. It's gonna be, we are introducing a block system and we're gonna make it super easy, right? So right now it's a speed mode. Let's say you are into uncategorized entries. We have introduced this block system along with the suggestions, right? So instead of you figuring out, see, this is a sample data, so ignore this table. But all we are trying to do is that, hey, you got this vendor right now. The current account is this one, and this is the account that we suggest, right? Or like, or you can simply choose any other account and just say save. So it's like you are just reclassified transactions in the block, and the way we have designed the block is by vendor or name, or depends, right? So imagine if there were like, hey, you got this, all these Uber transactions coded to advertising, but we believe that it should go to travel, right? So imagine, instead of you going through every single transaction, first of all, like, transactions are scattered. You have to first of all group all the transactions first, and then select them all, and then kind of reclassify them to appropriate account. Instead, it's just one click, because now with the suggestions, it's like you will be resolving transactions in the bulk directly. It's more about, like, if I'm okay with this, I'm just gonna say save, it's all done. So imagine if there were 5 or 50 transactions in this block, all of them will be resolved. So that way our goal is to also make the whole experience super easy, so that you don't have to go to transaction by transaction and then decide what's right or not, right? So it's like, in this case, like, this is a block that you see, and if you have like, if you want to resolve it, you can resolve it. If you want to ask question, you can ask question. So the action buttons are more prominent, right? So anyways, I think we are running out of time. I think I kind of just going with the flow, was super excited. So I'm gonna take a pause. I think this gives you enough idea as to what we are coming up with. There are going to be announcements as such that we'll be making. There are going to be launch webinar. There will be communications uh, as to what it is going to change for you. So yes, in short, uh, we will do, we'll kind of do enough announcements to make sure that you don't have to kind of do a huge change as such, right? So that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna, I know that Manish has been responding into the chat, and I think he has almost covered all the questions. But again, guys, feel free in case if you want to unmute yourself, ask something, share feedback, anything like that. We are quite open. In fact, most our features come from our customers' request, right? So if at all, if you are coming across any request as such that you're looking for, feel free to send it our way, and we'll be more than happy to kind of address that. So uh, let me know in case if any of you want to unmute self or ask any questions. So all yours. Yes, so Bonnie, we will send you the email. Manish, if you can send Bonnie an email about that, would be wonderful. All right, seems like I think we are all good. But again, guys, in case if you come across any questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to us. If any of you guys also happen to be at QuickBooks Connect, we are exhibiting it that as well. Booth is B23. So uh, I'll kind of would love to host you if at all you're planning to come there. And yep, till then, guys, we will have next session somewhere in December like this. If you have any new joinee or any of the new staff, or like if you kind of don't want to spend time train them and things like that, invite them to this kind of training session. Yeah, and then we'll be kind of we'll be having this kind of session every month. So you can also encourage your staff. So all right, guys, thank you very much for the time. I hope you found it helpful. And yes, we will be sharing this recording in a day or two. Yeah, that's it. Take care, guys. Bye bye.